Welcome to the first program of our Business and Society series, sponsored by the Bell College of Business and the Center for Professional Ethics. We're so glad to have with us today Katie Tyler of Tyler 2 Construction and Dick Toenjes from the Center for Ethics. Glad you're both here. And the topic is, of course, employer ethics, treating employees fairly. And we hope you're an expert on that. At least your employees do. Katie, when we've talked about ethics in the past, you have basically said that in your own mind, there's not much difference between ethics and fairness. And I thought that was very interesting because when I think about ethics, fairness is not necessarily the first word or the only word that comes to my mind. So could you please explain to us why you attach those two terms so directly?
Certainly. Like a lot of concepts in business, ethics is a word we all talk about. And I think we would all like to think that everybody's opinion and definition of ethics is the same as ours, but the reality is it's not. Ethics has to be taken into consideration based on one's background or their culture or their circumstance, history. For me, ethics and fairness are synonymous. And when I look at my office staff and how I treat them, I look at those two words being and meaning the same thing.
Really do.
I do.
Yeah, Dick, do you share the same view of ethics, or it's broader, or what is
Well,
it?
in typical philosophic fashion, yes and no.
Yeah, oh, well, that's you're a philosopher.
There's a broader range of ethical concerns. I mean, we owe ethical responsibilities to animals, the environment, children. And in those contexts, I don't think fairness would be exactly what you would call it. You would just call it care or obligation or something. But in the world of business, and in fact in any area where what you actually have is reciprocal exchange, and that's the world of business. When it's adult people exchanging whatever they're exchanging, goods and services or just favors or helps or whatever, there fairness is, I think, the ruling concept. You know, you treat one another fairly. Notice that doesn't make any sense if you're talking about an animal, but when you're talking about people, yeah. So especially in the business world, I think fairness is exactly the concept, and I like to focus on it. I think it works better than
the word ethics.
Than ethics, and better than social welfare and things like that. Look, you know, we got to be fair with one another, supplier, customer, whoever, yeah.
Well, Katie, one thing I think about, and I know you've thought about it in terms of your employees in particular, is that some of your folks are what you would consider more valued employees, in the sense that you can't imagine how you could go on or how the company could go on without them, or that they would be very, very difficult to replace because of what they bring to the company, as opposed to other workers that, though are valuable, they're not quite as essential. And we have the same kind of situation, let's say, in a department, about who the key players are and who the support staff basically is. Do you sometimes find yourself worried about fairness because you're wanting to, or do in fact, give certain favors or privileges or rewards to the more essential workers than the less essential workers? I mean, how do you mediate that or negotiate that?
Well, I think in the first place, no one in the company is essential to our operations, and that includes me. I don't
that surprises me.
I don't look at any individual as being essential to our continuity of operations. Now, having said that, I don't think fairness and equality are the same thing.
Oh, this is interesting.
I have great appreciation for every single one of my associates at the office. But the reality is that some people bring more value to the organization than others do. Whether that means their effect on the bottom line or their skill set. And that is normally reflected in their compensation package, in their perks to a certain degree. But I'm in business to be competitive. I mean, I won't be in business if I can't be competitive. And if I've got a certain skill set of employee that year after year they get a 5 or a 6% increase, at some point I'm going to be overpaying individuals for their skill set. I don't know of anybody who doesn't want to improve their lot in life, whether that be income or how they're contributing to society.
They're appreciated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I always have something that I tell my associates is if you want to make more money, I want you to come to me and tell me, how much do you want to make? And I will reflect on it and tell you what you have to do in order to be worth that to me.
Well, that takes a lot of candor on your part.
Absolutely it does. And there are some people who may not ever be worth that, and I will tell them that as well, and either help them to get the skill set that they need to be worth that, or help them find something where they may have another opportunity.
Yes, you just work with them.
Yes.
Dick, do you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I find this fascinating because the key is having things above board on the table so that, again, fairness can be achieved. And fairness in this context includes the idea of one employee understanding exactly what he or she needs to contribute in order to earn or receive whatever, and another employee can understand that.
Right.
And can understand why there's a difference if there is.
Yeah, and basically say maybe like, hey, I just don't have the skill set and I really don't want to develop it, so that it's fair that I get less than so-and-so who's just willing to put in the extra time and the effort to achieve X or Y or Z. I know I can live with that. What I can't live with is somebody being rewarded for not doing the work. And, I think an unfair employer would do that just because they like somebody. Give them more money.
Right, playing favorites would just
be
totally unfair.
Yeah. And unfortunately, my company is of a size where that corporateness doesn't happen, at least not overtly.
Oh, not overtly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's good. Here's a bigger topic. I mean, so far we've been focusing on easy things. Mm-hmm. What I want to focus now is on the big picture, the so-called American dream, or maybe I should say the old work ethos. In the old days, workers tended to be very, very loyal to companies in all sorts of ways. And indeed, although this is changing, when it used to be men primarily in the business world as opposed now to both men and women and increasingly women, sometimes in the old gender days, men would spend all their time working and very little time at home. But from what I've been watching in the college scene, or even my sons who are relatively young in their late 20s, early 30s, more men and women don't want to spend all their time working. They want to have family time, they want to have personal time, they want their employers to understand that, hey, family is more important to them than work. And it seems to be changing the marketplace or the workplace. Do you sense that kind of shift, either in your own company or in the world at large, or I should say the U.S.?
Oh, I think there's definitely a change, especially as you're seeing generational changes. You know, we're talking about the baby boomers retiring and the millennium generation and what's important to them. And the reality is that the American dream is not universal to everyone. The American dream is different for everyone, and what people define success as is different for everyone. And, I want to engender loyalty in the people that work for me. And regardless of what their American dream is, for me, the way I engender that loyalty is to make sure that I know by individual what their life's goals are. What do you want out of your life? And if I can find a way to help them get that life's goal through their work, then I've got a loyal employee. Let me give you an example. My marketing director, very accomplished woman, she only wants to work 4 days a week. Everybody else in my company works 5 days a week. But she only wanted to work 4. So we found a way to have her make 80% of what the value of her position is, and she only works 4 days a week.
Yeah, you know what's interesting now that you mentioned the 4-day model, my husband just hired a new office manager, and she wanted to work 4 days also, because basically she said she wanted Wednesdays to have this special time with her daughter. And he said, well, we can work around that, you know. He says, as long as we get the work done, I don't care if we do it in 3 days, 4 days, or 5 days, as long as we get the projects done. Dick, what do you think about this?
Well, there clearly are changes. You know, I mean, even this thought of your employee saying, look, Katie, I want to work 4 days, not 5. 20 years ago, which you wouldn't have thought to say that.
I had some angst over it. I don't mind telling you. I did.
Yeah. It's clear, according to surveys, that work is, just in the aggregate in our nation, work is declining in life importance. People don't invest as much. It ranks about number 8 on a list of, you know, way under things like family and education and free time.
Well, actually, the reason I think you might be saying, well, why is that an ethical issue? I really do think it's an ethical issue in the sense that we don't want to force people to have a certain value set. In other words, to say, if you dare to say you only want to work 4 hours a week, you can be sure you're going to be out of here on the first, you know, opportunity I get. But rather saying, what I liked is your attitude. Hey, let's figure out some way to do that, if it's at all possible, and let you have a full human life with family and friends and work and everything. I kind of like it.
In the workplace as well, not just out of the workplace.
Exactly.
That,
right.
You know, part of the issue here is designing the job so that it's meaningful and creative.
Well, it goes back to the point Dick said about ethics being fairness, but also being a matter of relationships. What we want is work not to cause bad relationships back at home. And vice versa, we don't want, you know, certain kinds of relationships at home, making it impossible for people to do good work. Well, another issue kind of related to loyalty and so on, and you know, nowadays people move more from company to company, and sometimes they're doing that voluntarily because they're using it as leverage to get up in the world and so on. But sometimes they're doing it because their company is downscaling or downsizing in some way or another. I have a son-in-law who's in the banking industry, and that is always collapsing and reorganizing and so on, and he's in, you know, middle management, kind of edging into upper management, but he's feeling very vulnerable in that, will, you know, he be part of the next Grim Reaper downsizing consolidation in one way or another. And of course, you're not very loyal to companies if, you know, suddenly you're thinking at age 50, I'm going to be told, well, here, you know, it's been nice knowing you, here's your compensation package, and hope you can find a job out there competing against my sons who are 25 and 30. How do you feel about downsizing? Have you ever been in that position?
I have, and one of my number one rules at my company is nobody is going to be surprised if they lose their job. So everybody is going to understand what the financial situation of the company is. So you're not going to read in the paper, Tyler 2 Construction's got a 20% layoff because business is bad. Everybody's going to know that. And if your performance is an issue, you're going to make sure you got feedback and you're given ways to correct it before you lose your job. So it's very clear. Do you understand if this continues that you're no longer being employed here? So nobody's going to be surprised. I've been in business for almost 25 years, and over 25 years there has been a lot of cyclical natures of the business. The one difference between the public sector and the private sector is I don't have pressure from stockholders or market factors that I have to make quick decisions like a Ken Lewis or, you know, somebody who's running a major company like that and gets pressure from Wall Street. We have had 2 occasions where we did have a downturn in business. And I did not want to lay people off, and I did not want the kind of environment like a lot of people in the construction industry where people lose their jobs because of a slowdown. So on both of those occasions, we, across the board, cut salaries 10%. And we were very clear to everyone, that included everyone, including myself, across the board, 10%. It was fair and it was equal. And in one case it was for 8 months, in one case it was for 10 months. But at the time that the economy turned back around and we got on a profitable phase, I bonused back to every individual the amount of money that they gave up during that cut.
Well, that's what I call it.
And that was ethical and fair, and I could sleep at night and live with it.
Well, I bet you have more employee loyalty than many other employers do.
I would hope so.
That's remarkable. I really do think that's remarkable. But I also think that it's relatively rare.
And I think the world can change.
I think if more companies did that, now that's something I could live with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, rather than seeing some colleague fired, I'd rather see this type of situation where everybody takes a cut temporarily, has a real good feeling about each other. And
the only way it worked at my company is because everybody knew that everybody was pulling their weight.
Right.
So it wasn't like somebody was slacking off and getting a break. And I'm sure there were people who didn't like it, but in the end it turned out good for
Well,
everyone.
I'm sure they didn't, you know what I mean? Some people think, like, I don't care about the other guy. You know, let them go and let me continue at my high-end salary.
But that's the way fairness operates.
Yes.
I mean, it can actually influence events like this. I mean, because it engenders a type of trust that everyone knows we're in the soup together and times are bad. And so all the way from the boss on down, everyone's contributing and everyone is going to hurt a little bit because it's all above board. It's not equal treatment, as you say. It's fair treatment, and everyone can, and they can see that. They don't like it, but you know, who likes a downturn? But
on a related topic, and actually, I didn't tell you beforehand that I would be asking you this, and this is kind of a global question. What do you think about companies that downsize, and they do it by outsourcing into the global arena or something like that? You know what I mean? It's sort of the tension between being able to outsource and pay people less somewhere else as opposed to paying people here at the going rate.
I understand why people do it. I understand why companies do it because they're driven by the bottom line. But when people go to work for these companies, they know what drives that business. So they know that it's a potential effect for it. The ones that I really don't understand are the ones who do it for age.
Yes.
Because especially in my business, I value the experience that comes with age. And that is never a consideration when I'm hiring someone.
Never.
Never.
Well, hey, I hate this is a company, you know, for baby boomers. You know what I mean? Dick, what do you think?
well, it shows you that companies that are publicly held and driven by the shareholder interests and the need to make numbers in those companies, I think, you know, the issues of fairness are much more complex. But I think you're right. The employee going in needs to understand the name of that game, and that it isn't going to be quite what it is at Tyler 2. One of my sons is in banking, and to me it almost seems unethical on his part. He has virtually no loyalty, I don't think, to the banks, but he's been bouncing around at his own discretion, and he gets a bonus every time he does it. But I remember at one point he was saying to me, "Dad, should I move to this offer? You know, it's a good offer." And I said, "Well, you really like the people you're with." "I do," he says. "Can you tell them what you're thinking about?" And he, you know, within reason, he said yes, and they'll understand. So. Okay, I mean, it's a different game. Whoa, boy, I couldn't play it.
It is a different game because when an employee who's been playing a very pivotal role in a company just decides to leave, it's real hardship for everybody to reassemble around them. But it can go in the opposite direction. If we're doing son stories here or whatever, one of my sons has stayed for too long in a position, I think he's in, at very low reward, because he just feels so loyal to the people that he can't, betray them somehow and take a better offer. And I keep saying, well, at some point, you need to think of yourself too. So we get into kind of discussions about, how much he should think of his own advancement and how much he should think of those who depend on him. And it's a hard, balance to achieve, which sort of brings maybe us to another topic that's related. I mean, when you were describing what you did, and instead of casting off people, namely asking everybody to take a temporary cut in salary, it would seem then that you're trying to create some sort of a corporate culture that's exemplary over at Tyler True Construction. Could you describe if that's part of your agenda?
Oh, that is way high on my agenda.
Really?
We intentionally have designed and feed and nurture the culture at Tyler too. We put together a group to study it actually some time ago to say, what are the common values that we hold dear as a company? We promote it, we hire towards it, and there are things that you don't, we got some things that you normally find, integrity, respect, but we've also got some things that you don't find, passion, fun. We want to have fun at work. That's in our core values. We want to have freedom of expression. We want everyone to feel free to be able to express their opinions in a respectful manner. Most companies hire, number one, for competency. How well can they do the job? Number two, compatibility. How well do they fit in? And lastly, culture. We hire in reverse. We hire for culture first. Do you fit in with the rest of the crowd third, and competency last? Because I can teach somebody construction. I can't teach them to get along with others, and I can't teach them to have value in our culture and our core beliefs.
I think that's incredible. I mean, if all companies switched to that ordering, what a different business world we'd have.
And don't make no mistake, I've made some pretty awful hiring mistakes in the past
I mean,
for people who didn't fit in.
Yes.
And it was pretty clear that they didn't fit in and they didn't make it.
Couldn't develop the skills.
Could not develop.
Also.
Well, yeah, we've sometimes hired for competency and not compatibility, and it made a big difference.
Yeah. Dick?
Well, this is very interesting. The corporate culture issue, the way I see it, is such a nebulous one. And business people that I've talked to, well, I kind of understand what it is, but I don't know how to get my hands around it. What you've done is solve the problem by hiring people that are going to be coherent and share that range of values that we call a corporate culture. I am curious, though, Katie, and we could make $1 million if we could do this. How could a company create or change its corporate culture, if not through the hiring process? What are there things that you can do?
Absolutely. There are organizational development companies out there whose missions are to help CEOs and leaders of organizations change their culture. One of the things that I wanted to do is I've been in the business for 25 years, and at some point I'm going to want to go do something else. So the culture around the organization for a long time was Katie's the one that makes the tough decisions. Katie's the one, and I wanted to spread that out. I wanted the culture to change so that everybody felt that they could participate in making some hard decisions. Now, how was I going to do that? Because I can remember, you don't touch the thermostat, because Katie's got it set on what she wants it set at, which was totally absurd, but somehow that's how it got made up.
I wish people gave me the same prerogative, no.
So I actually hired an organizational development company to come in and say, what's going on in my company that's causing this to happen, and how can I help change it? Now, we've got 34 employees, so it's easier to do. And I'm the one constant that's been there since day one. So my message has been consistent, throughout the whole process. Now, what I'm going to find more difficult is how is that going to get translated into the next group of leaders?
To inherit that?
Exactly, because people are there because they like the culture, and they're going to want to know that can continue.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's possible.
Yeah. Just sort of related to that as we're sort of wrapping things up, I mean, corporate culture also extends into an idea of social responsibility. I mean, what do you see your company and or a company in general owing to the public? Do you feel that sense of obligation to, let's say, the Charlotte community?
I personally do. My father was a professional in a nonprofit his entire life. So he was all about giving back to the community and making a difference. And I got that message at a very early age. And my business did not start growing until I became involved in community activities. And I talk about that all the time. We, the company, contribute 10% of our profits every year to community, charity, opportunities to improve it. We've actually got a committee in-house of people, I'm not on it, that we call the rescue dogs. And they go out among the employees and say, I allocate money from our profits to this group to say, find something in the community that you want to do. It's not just about writing a check, it's about you being involved in that activity or that charitable cause, and we will help participate in that. And everybody doesn't do it, but the ones who do really get it.
That's wonderful. I really like that idea. Yeah. Dick, do you have any short thing to add to that?
Yeah, the move toward more of a sense of social responsibility has been going on. I mean, it started with you and with your father, I guess, but in other industries, it's just been a growing movement, but it's a good one because I think the companies, publicly or privately held, are recognizing more and more clearly that they are an integral part of society, and so the fairness model again kicks in. I mean, these huge banks, for example, have quite a stake in the Charlotte school system, obviously,
yeah,
and they know that.
School system, and as we're kind of concluding that, I also see that this is part of our role here at UNC Charlotte. Particularly in the business college, to create the kind of environment that encourages, students that, hey, this is a business leader. This is how she runs her company. So it isn't all about money and, that type of things. It's about doing something meaningful for society and contributing to, our lives. If you had one last word to say, Katie, and that's just about all the time we have, what would your take-home message be to our audience about employers and employees and business?
To me, if it will let you sleep at night and you can feel good about every decision that you make, you understand the issue of ethics and fairness and treating people the way you want to be treated.
I think you're right. It's usually when something's going on in my gut that doesn't feel good, I kind of know that I haven't handled something the right way. Does this kind of go along with your views, Dick?
It does, but you're more optimistic than I. I heard an interview between two executives at a major petroleum company who were really proud of the way they had cornered the market on propane. And I think they slept well, thinking they had done a great thing. So there's another side to that.
Well, maybe, but I think I'm going to go along with Katie's message. And thank you for being with us today. Thank you for both of you being here today. It was a great beginning for the series.
Yes.
Excellent.